Last week, Rania, Prime Minister Modi was in the United States to do a number of things, but certainly to meet with President Trump. Of course, longtime good relations between the two. And that's just one of many things happening as it concerns Mr. Modi's ongoing tenure as Prime Minister of India. To talk about the Modi-Trump visit, some of the interesting things happening with popular struggles in India, we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show by Abdul Rahman, who is a reporter with the essential People's Dispatch. Abdul Rahman, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, great to have you with us. And I'll start here, I think, with the Modi-Trump visit. I mean, obviously, in Trump's first term, the two were very close, have continued to be close as Trump was out of office and now back in. But a lot of issues sort of on the table: immigration, tariffs, military deals. I mean, give us a sense of what happened at that meeting and if anything notable came out of it.
Well, whatever was reported in the media in India in particular, we see it was only about gestures. That what happened basically. Modi met Trump. Trump did certain things which basically talked about how tariffs. India is going to face reciprocal tariff. How we are going to deal with. India is going to buy more defense equipments from US. How India is going to buy more oil and other things from the US. And apart from that, they also talked about certain things. For example, the extradition of one of the persons which are wanted in India. So these are the things by and large which happened, which were reported in the media in India in particular, emphasizing that this is one of those visits where both of them showed the great bonhomie, the great friendship they have apparently. And it seems that Trump has realized with this meeting, I'm talking about Indian media, how they reported that India's significance and so on and so forth. They also talked about the immigrants, the so-called illegal immigrants, what we generally call the undocumented migrants, the deportation of all of it, and the questions which were raised during the press conference. It seems that India agreed with the way the deportation is happening, and how India is ready to take back its citizens only if it is proven that they are Indian citizens, and so on and so forth. So these are the things which happened, and this is also the content of the joint statement which was made after the meeting was over. So these are the things. Yeah.
So, Abdul Rahman, you actually wrote about the consequences this meeting had in India based on some of the reactions there to this meeting. There was this cartoon that was published in this very old, now digital magazine that basically was sort of mocking Modi for his behavior with President Trump, depicting him in chains at their recent meeting. And the reaction was to block this digital magazine, and that led to protests and criticisms over press freedom and government censorship. So I'm curious if you could speak to what the blocking of that magazine reflects about broader concerns with regard to press freedom and government censorship in India under this administration.
Well, the magazine under which we are referring to is Vikatan, is a Tamil language magazine which is more than 100 years old. It published a cartoon which basically referred to the way the Indian deportees are chained whenever they are transferred in the military plane, and so on and so forth. And of course, India under Modi has been extremely intolerant to any kind of depiction, whether it is in the form of cartoon or whether it is in the form of any serious intervention, article, videos, whatever. For example, a documentary which basically depicted how Modi, during his tenure as chief minister of one of the states in India, had a role to play during the anti-Muslim, anti-minority rights in 2002, was banned in India, and the media organization, which is BBC, was raided following it. Apart from that, we all know the case of NewsClick, how it was dealt with only because it has a critical stand on some of the policies which Modi government has been following for more than a decade now. And there are many such examples. How, for example, one of the largest media organizations in India, like NDTV, was forced to be sold to one of the you can say cronies of this government, and there are certain other examples. So the point is, what happened to Vikatan is basically is part of the sequence, or part of the things which have been happening against the media organizations, against the press in India under Modi regime, which basically is extremely intolerant to any kind of criticism. And particularly, if you are critical to Modi as a person, then you are basically you face much more severe action, and that's what happened. Of course, because there is some kind of space left where there is an opposition, there is a left forces who have been vocal to this kind of attack on media in India. And that's what happened in the case of Vikatan as well. What we saw, that all the opposition, including the left, came out in open against this particular attack, calling it attack on press freedom, and which basically forced the government to later on kind of lift the blockade on the website. So yeah, this is basically a symptom of Modi's regime or Modi government's intolerance towards press in India, to any kind of criticism.
Well, you brought up the point of NewsClick and what happened there, and one of the major issues in terms of the crackdown on NewsClick was their coverage of the farmers' struggle, which has continued to be ongoing. And I know in Karnataka, there's now an open-ended farmers' strike. Could you talk about that and what it says overall, what the ongoing issues are for farmers and their continued struggle here against the center?
Well, there are farmers' struggle going on all across India at this moment when we are talking. Apart from the Karnataka thing, which you referred, there are also struggles going on in northern India, what we call Haryana, Punjab, Delhi. The farmers in and around capital Delhi have been agitating. And by and large, the demands are similar. They are all talking about the attempts by the Modi government to introduce the big corporate interest in Indian agriculture. We should know that in agriculture in India is basically a profession which is dominated by the middle and small farmers. These farmers have very small land, and they cannot. Millions of people depend on agriculture for their livelihood. So more than 40% of Indian labor force is dependent on agriculture. So if the big corporate is introduced, of course they are going to suffer, and therefore they do not like Modi government's attempts to do it. But Modi government has been very consistent about it. They introduced 3 laws in 2019, which they were forced to take back because of the agitation. They have tried to do it again recently, and therefore there is a resurgence of the struggle. Apart from that, the farmers are also angry about government's intervention in on behalf of the big corporate houses to take their land for different kinds of projects. So, for example, building a factory, building highways, building all sorts of kinds of projects on the land of the farmers without giving them adequate compensation, and without kind of looking for ways for those who are displaced because of this process. Because they lose their land, they have no other way for their life to earn their livelihood, and hence they basically fall into the trap of poverty and debt and so on and so forth. So they want to avoid it. So what is happening in Karnataka is primarily a struggle against government intervention on behalf of the big corporate houses to acquire land for other projects, and not finding ways for the rehabilitation of those who are displaced in the process, apart from demanding minimum support prices for the agricultural product, apart from basically saying that the government should procure more of the agricultural products, because if it is left to the private corporate houses, what happens that none of the farmers get adequate price for what they produce. So for example, just to give an example, if the wheat is produced per quintal, per 100 kgs of say 3,000 rupees, or say around $100, just to give an example, is the cost, they are not getting even that cost recovered by when they go into the market to sell it. And so they heavily depend on minimum support prices. They heavily depend on the government procuring it so that they can earn some profit. They have some money, some savings, which they can again use to reinvest it. So because they are not getting adequate prices, they are basically selling in distress. And this is happening because the government has refused to procure what it used to procure. So increase the procurement. So these are the major demands which the farmers in Karnataka, the farmers in northern India, the farmers in other parts of India have been raising, because they have been a victim of the attack of the neoliberal market forces on agriculture, and particularly when there is no alternative for them. There is no alternative employment. There are no alternative ways to kind of earn livelihood. So that basically is an attempt to find ways so that they can survive economically.
So you've also been covering this crackdown against academia as well. And there was specifically a crackdown recently on student activism at this New Delhi-based university, Jamia Millia Islamia. Sorry if you can correct my pronunciation of that. But I'm curious if you could talk about, first of all, what happened in this particular case, especially with regards to the university administration's collaboration with police. And then also, what does this reflect about broader trends of dissent suppression under this government? And I guess we're kind of going back to a similar theme here.
Yeah, exactly. So what is happening to Jamia Millia Islamia is basically has happened to several other universities in India since this government has come to power. And in 2014, Jawaharlal Nehru University, another major university in Delhi, is another example. There were several attacks. So the basic issue here is Jamia Millia Islamia has been at the forefront of, in opposition to Modi's attempts, the BJP government's attempts to basically kind of introduce Hindutva politics, introduce majoritarian politics, and attack the interest of the religious minorities in the country through the citizenship law. And of course, there are several other instances since 2014. If we start counting them, that will take a long time. So I'm just going into the point that the attack on minorities has been an issue in Jamia Millia Islamia, but the university has been regimented because the administration has completely been controlled by the government, and they do not allow any kind of activity, student activity, which they think can be explicitly political. So they are not allowed to have study circles. They are not allowed to have meetings, public meetings. They are not allowed to have any activity which have explicit political tone. And therefore, students have been fighting against it. Because the whole idea of university is to basically get all kinds of exposure possible as a student, and therefore they have been raising the issue of freedom of expression. They have been raising the issue of political freedom. They have been raising the issue of rights, and of course clubbing it with the larger issue of the attacks against religious minorities. And because they have been raising the issue, what happens that the administration targets the students. In this particular case, for example, they suspended around 24 of the students. They published their photos, their names, their personal details made it public without considering this the privacy issues, the threats it can pose to students, particularly the students coming from the remote areas, the women, girl students coming from different parts of the country, first generation learners do not have social capital to stand against all those things. So despite all those concerns, they did that. And they have been refusing to take all these things into consideration and address the student issues. So because of that, what you see that the students are agitating against it. They have been protesting against it. They have taken the protest out of the university now, have gone to different parts. It is spreading. But of course, given the fact that it has Modi government has a huge control over country's media, none of this is being reported as it should be reported, and therefore we do not exactly are not in a condition to tell you the details which are required, which are necessary. And so whatever sources we have, we can gather the information and tell you that this is basically a fight. What happening in Jamia is a fight for the democratic space, which both the students and the overall general political dissent, the opposition, requires in India.
Mm-hmm. Well, Abdul Rahman, we appreciate you being willing to walk through all of us. I hope everyone's following your byline at People's Dispatch, where you're covering a huge range of stories across South Asia and beyond. peoplesdispatch.org. Thank you so much for some of your time here in the Freedom Side.
Thank you.